All righty. Hopefully that sounded all right to everybody.
What a great
Before we
song.
get the lesson started today, I will turn it back over to Sean just briefly so he can cover some Zoom tips and tricks for everybody. Sean, take it away.
All righty. Well, first of all, I gotta say I'm super impressed with you guys. I think when we started this, whenever we'd see some students' videos, we'd mostly just see foreheads and chins, and this time everybody seems, front and center and headphones on and ready to go, most of you. So, kudos to you. But if you're new here or if you need some review, I'm gonna do that for you now. First of all, I'll start with this, as usual. If you don't have your video on, but you want us to see you, you can change that. Usually, if you're on a computer, I think it's on this side, on the left side of your screen on a computer, there's a button that says Start Video. So if you want us to see you, you can just press that, and it turns your camera on, whatever camera you might have, and then we can see you. If you change your mind, you don't want us to see you, you can also stop the video just as easily. Then, the next thing I'll mention is we've been using this feature a lot. It's called Raise Hand. Just like if you were in a regular class in person, you have the ability, if you have a question, maybe we're going over something too quickly or, you think of something, you can always raise your hand if you have a question. If you want to do that, since you're all muted, you can't just talk. We have to unmute you. So when you raise your hand, that's what we'll do. To do that, you want to go to the middle of your screen on a computer, and it should say Participants. And when you touch that, the little window pops up, and one of the buttons on that window says Raise Hand. If you change your mind, maybe somebody answered the question or you don't have a question anymore, you can lower your hand just the same way. After you raise it, you can lower it. That's it for that. That's pretty easy. And I'll be looking at everybody's screen too if for some reason you can't figure it out or you're having a tough time, but you have a question, just do this. Woo! Wave your arms all over the place. I'll see you. So I'll patch you in that way. And last, Robert mentioned something about changing your name on the screen there, because I noticed some people are, iPad number 2, or I see somebody named administrator. There's somebody named 16319, which is fine. You can be anonymous if you want to. But if you want to change that, I think that's through the participants button as well. And then when you see your name up there at the top of the list, because it just shows a list of all the people that are in this room here, and you should be at the top, and you should be able to just click on that, and it says rename. So just look for that. Look for something that says rename, and you can rename yourself and actually put your name. So if you have a question, we don't say, okay, now to iPad number 3. So that's all I have for today. So we'll get back to Bryan, and we'll go over a lot of good stuff today.
All righty. Thank you, Sean. Yeah, and I want to remind everybody, if at any time you do have questions, don't hesitate to raise that hand either by clicking the button or actually raising your hand and getting Sean's attention, because when we talk about this stuff, when I'm presenting some information, even if it seems like maybe you should know it or you already heard it, if you don't get it, when I'm talking about it, the time to ask a question is right then, because usually what I try to do is build on the information as we go along, and I just want to make sure we don't leave anybody behind. So don't be shy about asking questions. Okay. I hope most of us were here last week. It looks like we got another good crowd today, about 50 people. So great to see everybody again virtually. And what we covered last week in my class was basically a kind of an analysis of our music styles and what goes on in the style, who's in the band, so to speak, the bass player, the drummer, etc. And when we talk about hobby style playing, which is what we all do here on our instruments, we're talking about basically two things that we have to think about when we sit down to play. And the first one is what we talked about last week, which is a music style. So when you sit down, are you going to touch country, or are you going to touch Latin or rock or march? And the other thing, other than your music style, is your melody sound or your melody sounds, if you choose to use more than one. And so to me, those are the two really important things that we go through as we're playing any song, your music style and your melody sounds. And in my opinion, the way that the instruments set themselves up, no matter what you have, whether it's an easy one or an aria or anything in between, you automatically get these really good sounding melody sounds, melody instruments that you can play without having to do any work, which for me is, I love that because I like to sit down, touch one button, and start playing. So I'm going to show you some different things today, but just know that this applies to everybody, no matter what instrument you have. And what I'm going to start off with today talking about, hopefully this is a little bit of a review, but again, if it's not, make sure you ask questions, is there's 3 different names for kind of the same thing depending on what instrument you have. Okay, if you have an E series instrument, and I guess I should say, I didn't mention this yesterday, but if you don't know what your instrument is called, like for example, if you have a Sterling, you probably know that it's called a Sterling, but it's actually, in our book, it's called an A5500. And if you look at your manual, it should say A-5500. Okay, so you should definitely know what model you have. If you don't know that, either look up your manual or make sure you ask one of your PAs at the store, because that'll determine what workshops you want to attend. And when I say something like an E-series instrument, if you don't know that you have an E-series, you won't know that that applies to you. So having said that, if you have any E-series instrument, like right now, if you can see here, I'm looking at an EZ4, okay? An EZ4 would be an E-series. If you have something like a Fanfare, that's an E-series, that's an EY300. If you have a Marquee, that's an E-series. So any E-series like that, you're going to have a feature that's called Style Setup. Okay, Style Setup. And that's different from Song Setup. We're not going to go into that today, but you have Style Setup. If you have an SD instrument, if you're a new owner of one of our SD instruments that we just introduced recently, you're going to have something called Auto Setup, A-U-T-O, Auto Setup. And that basically does the same thing as Style Setup. If you have anything else besides an E-series or an SD, you're going to have what they call Rhythm Preset. Okay? So whether you have Rhythm Preset, Auto Setup, or Style Setup, you have this really great feature. And this is one of my favorite things about our instruments, is that if I touch any style, and I'll just reset it here, I'm going to touch the home button, which resets the instrument, so you know it's coming on with nothing preset into it that I put in there. And I touch one button, I'm going to touch country. It automatically puts in not only my country band, which is what we talked about last week, but it puts in country melody sounds for me to play. I have country guitar, right? And on this instrument, I happen to have a lower keyboard as well, so I have another complementary sound down here, kind of like a country piano, which is pretty cool. And all I did was touch country. And that Style Setup, or Rhythm Preset, or Auto Setup, depending on the instrument, it automatically plugs in that sound there, or in this case, 2 sounds, right, upper and lower keyboard, and I didn't have to do anything. You know, there's some people who say, well, I really love Latin music, but I don't know what, you know, Latin instruments or what instruments go with Latin music. Well, they already thought of that for you. How about that? If I touch Latin, right, I just touch that one button, Latin music style. Now I have vibes and Spanish guitar. All right, if I go over to something like, you know, rock, I'll get like a rock and roll organ and rock and roll guitar. So no matter what style you pick, and again, this applies whether you have an easy one or an aria, anything in between, you have something either Style Setup, Auto Setup, or Rhythm Preset. And when you touch any style, it automatically gives you at least one sound if you have a 1 keyboard, or 2 sounds if you have a 2 keyboard instrument. And you don't have to do any thinking. Now, are they going to be your favorite sounds in the world? You know, maybe not. I mean, they're at least guaranteed to sound good, though, and that's a starting point. And then if you want to change sounds from there, that's what we're going to get into today. Okay? So let me show you a little close-up here. This is the time when if you get seasick, you might want to look away for a second. Whee! Yeah, there's my traveling music. So I'm going to give you a close-up shot here. Now, this is the EZ4, but it's going to look very similar if you have another easy instrument. There's a blue button right there that says Style Setup. Okay, now on the EZ4, it's just below your screen to the left. Okay, and you can see that that's lit up red. That means style setup is activated, and that means that no matter what, I'm going to have two really good sounds for that style. Now I'm going to try to take you over here to the fanfare. That's about as far as I can go, but hopefully you can see there on the display screen just below that, there are a series of 8 buttons. Now you probably can't see the numbers, but I'll show you where they are here. Okay, those dark gray buttons there, those are also your style setups. Okay, so what that means is that when you go from an instrument like an Easy 4, which has one style setup, okay, one button, and then of course since I have the 2 keyboards, it gives me one sound up here and another sound down here. When you go to an instrument, it actually starts with the Easy 10, but I don't have one in the room. But the fanfare and beyond, you're going to have a certain number of buttons in the middle here, right in the center. Now the Easy 10 has numbers 1 through 5. The fanfare has numbers 1 through 8. And if you have a larger instrument, it's going to have numbers 1 through 10. And that's the most that you would have, is 1 through 10. And what that means is that in addition to that beautiful sound or 2 sounds that you get just from turning on the style, each number gives you an additional 2 sounds, one for the upper and one for the lower, that are specifically made for that style. Now, to me, that's really cool. Now, I don't know, I mentioned this yesterday. I don't know if anybody has been around long enough with Fletcher that they remember an instrument called the Majesty, or if anybody ever owned that. Now, the Majesty in its heyday was like the top of the line, right? That's like the Aria is now. And this is going back a couple of decades, probably at least. And that had 3 rhythm presets. 3. Okay, and then there was a special edition of that instrument called the Millennium, and that had 5. That was a huge deal at the time. And then as the technology progressed, now we have up to 10, and it's really 11 because you have what we call preset 0 plus 1 through 10. Upper and lower keyboard, you get 22 sounds just by touching one button. So to me, that's incredible. And we kind of take it for granted now, but if you've ever played on some of those instruments like a Majesty or something like that, it really will make you appreciate what we have technology-wise with our current line. So I'm going to take us over to the Sterling. So we're going to travel a little bit this way. Where's my music, Sean?
Oh, it's not music as much as it's just wee.
All right. So over here at the Sterling, what I'm going to show you is the same thing, okay? So I'm going to turn everything off here. Now, if I pick any style, I was playing Girl from Ipanema before, so I'll play that again. I'm just going to touch one button, and this is the same Latin right over here. Touch one button, and now, instead of just the one sound or the one preset for upper and lower that I showed you on the 4, now I have that same setup that comes on. Remember, it was vibes and guitar. Okay, I still have that. That's still what we would call preset 0 or setup 0. But now, if I touch, let's say, I don't know, number 4, now I have a full orchestra on the top. If I touch number 9, I have the mariachis. I have accordion on the lower. So each number that I touch is going to give me a different sound for the upper and for the lower keyboards. So however many numbers you have, let's go back, if we were talking about the Easy 10, you'd have numbers 1 through 5. That means that you have 6 total setups, right? You have one on 0, and then 1 through 5, upper and lower keyboard. So that would mean as soon as you select one of your music styles, you have a total of 12 different sounds that were custom made for that style, and they were put in there by our Lowry folks, or our SD folks, and they're right there. You touch the one button, and you got new sounds. And you know, without any guesswork, that those sounds are going to go with that style that you picked, because by the nature of it being style setup or rhythm preset, it is specifically made for that style. So I think that's really cool. And if you have something like the fanfare or the journey, you have up to number 8, and if you have one of the larger instruments, you have up to number 10. Okay, so hopefully that's kind of a review for everybody. Sean, do you have that graphic that shows the formula for the rhythm presets?
Yeah, it's kind of a formula. This would be something either good. Well, actually, you don't need to write this down because Robert's gonna actually send it to you. So
Yeah,
hold on
Robert
just a
will
second.
email
Let
this
me
to everybody.
pull that up.
So what Sean's going to put up on the screen here in a second is a formula. Now, what I mean by that is if you have an instrument that has up to number 10, and unfortunately this only works with the instruments that have up to number 10. If you have numbers 1 through 5 or 1 through 8, some of these may be the same, but it's not guaranteed. If you have numbers 1 through 10, what you're going to notice is that there's this formula. And we got to learn this pretty early on when I started with the company. And it's not to say that you have to memorize the whole thing, but you get to know the sounds that you like. For example, I like organ, I like strings, I like piano, and I like the last two, the ensemble and finale. And so what this formula means for us as players is that when I select any style, okay, it could be Latin, it could be a country style, it could be swing, it could be march. This formula that you see on your screen there is going to apply to those instruments that are selected. Okay, so for example, if I'm on, let's go to big band, and I go to number 4. So number 4, if you can see on the screen there, says string and strums. This gives you anything like guitar, banjos, orchestral, strings, and so on. Basically, any string or strum instrument. So for swing band, which is what I'm on right now, if you picture a big band on stage, you probably wouldn't be a whole orchestra. It'd probably be a guitar player. So that's, in fact, what I have. Okay. If I go to country, I don't know if anybody can picture a country band on stage, but the string players would probably be guitar and fiddle. And that's exactly what they give me, fiddle and guitar. All right, if I go to Latin, you probably would have some string players on there. Okay, if I go to march, I'd probably have some strings and bells, something like that. Okay, so, and that's going to be true with any of the numbers that you pick there. So let me, I will mention this too. If you have an instrument, there are some that have a button that's called vintage. Okay, now I want to take just a second to kind of tell you what that is. This formula that you see there was around from the introduction of the Royale. I don't know if anybody remembers having the Royale, but that was the first one that had these 10 setups like this, these 10 presets. So that was a huge, huge technology boost at the time. And again, we were going from either 3 or 5, and then all of a sudden they had 10. So this was really, really cool. From the Royale up all the way through our E-Series technology, so like Marquee and Inspire and all that, this formula applied to all of your rhythm presets. Now, remember I said if you have an E-Series instrument, you have something called style setup, which is a little bit different, but basically the same as rhythm preset. What style setup did, they introduced a whole bunch of new sounds, which was great, especially as players. We love getting the new sounds and all that stuff. What they did kind of stray away from, though, temporarily, was this formula. So there were a bunch of us, especially employees and concert artists and many students also, had gotten to know this formula. So, for example, I would go to number 4 and expect some kind of string or strum instrument, and I would get piano, or I'd get trumpet or something. And it would be a great sound, but it wouldn't be what I was expecting based on all of the other instruments that I played. So there are a handful of instruments. This is going to be on, I hope I don't leave anything out. It should be on the Inspire, Rialto, Marquee, Grand Marquee, and Aria. So if you have any of those instruments, you're going to have a button right next to your setups that says vintage. Okay, and what vintage means, many people think it's like vintage sounds or vintage instruments, and that's not really the case. What vintage means is it applies this vintage formula that Sean has up on the screen there. So if you're somebody like me who really got used to that formula and you touch number 8 and you expect a piano and it's, mariachis or something, you might want to consider using vintage. When I play on an instrument that has that, that's almost always what I pick. Because it doesn't mean that it's old sounds, vintage sounds, or whatever. It just means that it follows that formula that we've all gotten to know. Okay? So if you use on those instruments, you have what they call normal style setup and vintage style setup. So you have a whole set of sounds that's going to follow this formula that Sean has up on the screen there, and then you have another set that kind of may or may not follow it, if that makes sense. If you have something like a Royale, a Stardust, a Prestige, a Legend, Sterling, Patriot, Liberty, anything like that that has the 10 setups, and you have rhythm preset turned on, and I'll zoom us in here. Whee! You'll see that it says rhythm preset, but then there's normal and organ. Okay, now hopefully you can see on the screen that normal is selected right now for me. And, again, for me, 99.9% of the time I'm going to use normal instead of organ. If you do select organ, what you're going to get is all organ sounds. Now, I love organ music probably more than the average person, but not for every single one of my presets. So remember, if you remember that formula, organ is going to be number 3 on any style, okay, provided you have rhythm preset selected. Now, if you want everything to be organ, if you're just somebody who just can't get enough of those organ sounds, you can touch organ, and that'll give you the organ presets. Now, you will get a complementary sound on the lower keyboard, and Robert had mentioned yesterday that typically that complementary sound will follow that same formula. So, 4 would be strings, 6 would be a solo instrument, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Before we go on, does anybody have any questions? I don't see any hands raised, but I'm hoping that this is all making sense to everybody. Nope, maybe got one question.
From Rich, go ahead. Let's see if we can get Rich here. Go ahead, Rich.
Oh, yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, good. When you have the style set up, lit up on your instrument, and then you say, hey, I'm going to go to preset number 4, does that, in fact, does the style setup notes still, are they still included in the sound? Or does style 4 override, does button number 4 override the style setup choice?
Yes, I think so. Let me rephrase maybe. So button number 4 is also a style setup, provided you have that style setup turned on. Your numbers in the middle can be controlled in a number of different ways. There could be rhythm presets or style setups. It could be vintage. It could be category presets, which, depending on time, we might get into today. It could be bank presets. So it could be general presets also. But when you have what we're talking about now, which is the rhythm preset or style setup selected, right now it's on 0, which means that that's on, but none of my numbers 1 through 10. So when I go to 4, it will override those sounds that I previously had. So let's say if I'm on march, right now I'm going from, they just call it marching band. If I go to number 4, it's going to be strings with bell.
So basically,
okay. So it does give me those new sounds, but it doesn't override it in the sense because it still is style setup. It's just another option.
All right, but all right. So the sounds that were originally when just the style setup button was lit, because if I press another button, that number remains lit. The style setup button remains lit on my instrument. It doesn't show.
If style setup is still lit up, it should be on style setup. Is that what you mean?
No, I've got style setup when I first turn it on, and then I say, okay, I don't like this sound, so I press another button, and let's pick any number. So I press number 1, but the style setup, the master one that goes on initially, is still lit. So,
Okay, that's a good point. And I think I mentioned this yesterday, but I didn't mention it yet today. So what happens, let me see if I can get you a close-up view again here. So when you first turn on the instrument, style setup goes into what we call standby mode, no matter what instrument you have, if it's the easy one or the aria, same thing. Now, I don't know if you can tell right now, the lighting is kind of odd here, but right now the normal rhythm preset is lit up in an orange color. And when you turn on your instrument, it will be lit up in an orange color. Okay, it doesn't matter what instrument you have. And then what happens, if I select any style, jump back in here. I don't know if you can see a difference, but it went to red. Okay, and what that means is that when it's in orange, it means that it's in standby mode. Okay, and what standby mode is, if you think about, sometimes it's easy to put too much thought into what some of these terms mean, but let's just take rhythm preset or style setup. The first word is either rhythm or style. And what that means is that it has to be used with a style. In other words, when it's lit up orange like this, it's in standby mode. It's waiting for me to tell it what style of music I want to play so that it can then put the instruments for that style into these numbers. So even though it's lit up orange, I can go through here, and what I'm actually on is general presets. And it looks like you got a big window instrument there, Rich. It should tell you on the screen general preset somewhere.
okay, got it.
And then when you select a style, it could be waltz or whatever, now it's lit up red, and then you are in fact on style setup.
Thank you very much.
All right, sure thing. That's a great question, though, because it does light up when you start your instrument. It lights up orange. So yeah, if you want to use that, just keep in mind that rhythm preset or style setup or auto setup for the SDs must be used with a style, or else it doesn't know what instruments to put in there.
Excellent.
Do we have any other questions before we go on here?
I don't see any at the moment.
All right. So I think what I'll do is I'll show you a couple examples here of what I was talking about. And what I'll do is I'll highlight using a girl from Ipanema again, just kind of how easy this can be. Okay, so if I turn everything off, this is kind of how the instrument would come on. Probably can't see it from there, but style setup or rhythm preset is on orange. If I touch Latin, I'm just going to use the bossa nova style. Okay, what's really cool about this, and I'll have Robert include this in the email that he sends out because I don't think it's on that sheet there, but there are certain things that either vintage style setup or rhythm preset will do in addition to giving you the melody sounds. So this is really cool. I mean, a lot of people don't know this. If I go to number 1, if you remember last week, one of the things I talked about was as far as your band goes, is if you want a more minimized style, in other words, there's not as much going on in the background, you can turn off your Orchestra Plus. I don't know if anybody remembers that from last week. If you touch number 1, and again, this is only if you're using rhythm preset or style setup, vintage style setup, you touch number 1, it turns off Orchestra Plus automatically, in addition to giving you the other sound. So listen to this. This is Bossa Nova on setup 0. Now we go to number 1. Isn't that cool? So number 1 takes away the Orchestra Plus. Number 2 also takes away the Orchestra Plus, and it turns on drum variation. So if I go from, here's 0 again. If I go to 2, hear that drum change, and the orchestra dropped out. Okay, so 1 and 2 both turn off your Orchestra Plus. 2 will also turn on your drum variation. In addition to that, numbers 4 and usually number 6 will also turn on your drum variation. Okay, 1 and 2 are the only ones that turn off the Orchestra Plus, but 2, 4, and typically number 6 also will turn on your drum variation. And then also, usually I'd say, 9 times out of 10 anyway. Your last two presets, whether that's numbers 9 and 10, or if you have like a fanfare, numbers 7 and 8, or if you have an easy 10, numbers 4 and 5, will turn on your harmony. Because as you can see on the screen there, your 9 and 10 are your ensemble and finale sounds, meaning those are big and full. Those are, it even says they're fuller sounding registrations. So whatever your last two numbers are, or for sure at least the last number, will turn on some kind of harmony for you for either a big finishing sound, or if you want to start off your arrangement really big. Sometimes you want to come right out of the gates screaming, and that's kind of a fun way to start too on 9 or 10. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just play through, and if you want to spotlight me again here, Sean, I'm just going to play through Girl from Ipanema just using the rhythm presets or style setups. Okay, so here we go. Isn't that cool? I got the whole Latin orchestra available, and I just had to touch one button to set it up, which was the Latin button over here for Bossa Nova, and then I just pick whichever number I want. And it looks like we don't have any questions, so I do want to add something here too. If you have a big window instrument, now the one you're looking at here is the Sterling. This has a double wide window. It was the first one that had that, or actually the Imperial had that as well. But a big window instrument is anyone that's even half this size. So if you have something like, a Prestige, a Sterling, a Patriot, or bigger, you're going to have a big window. Now, you have buttons that are way to the bottom left. So if you look at your bottom keyboard and you go all the way over to the left, you'll see a few numbered buttons that say Custom. Now, you might have only 1, 2, 3. You might have up to 4, or at most, you might have up to 5. On most instruments, this button is going to be number 4, but if you have something like an Inspire, Rialto, Legend, maybe a few others, it'll be number 3. But either number 3 or number 4, you touch that custom button, and what it does is it shows me in my big window here, on the Sterling, it's on the right side, all of the things that I just talked about that are in my setups, in my presets. So when Sean put up that graphic that says numbers 1 through 10, there are a couple of instruments, the Royale and the Stardust. I don't know if we have any owners there. When you touch that number 4 here, that custom 4, you're going to see the exact wording that Sean put up there. So in other words, number 1 will say easiest, number 2 will say a little more, number 3 will say organ, number 4 is string and strum, et cetera, et cetera. If you have a Prestige or beyond, you're going to have what they call active preset display. And I love active preset display. And I'll tell you why. When I play my shows, I don't know if anybody was in attendance virtually at my concert that I did last Friday. I had a blast doing that. I played it right here on this instrument, on the Sterling. But this works for any instrument that has this active preset display. There's no way that I can possibly remember every single setup that's in the instruments, right? There's just thousands and thousands and thousands. But when I have this preset display, which on this instrument again is number 4, custom 4, or custom 3, depending on what you have, it will pop up everything that's in here. So instead of just saying string or strum, it says orchestra, right? Instead of just saying solo, does anybody know what a solo instrument is? It's an instrument that doesn't have harmony turned on. That's pretty vague, right? So you don't really know what that might be. With active preset display, I know that instrument is trumpet, right? So it tells me all the stuff. So when I play my concerts, I typically don't use a stick or anything. I just use my rhythm presets or style setups, and I can do so much because I get all these sounds that are built in, and if you have a big window, you know what those sounds are, right? You can just go in, and I can kind of plan out when I'm setting it up. I think, okay, I like number 1, number 2, number 4, number 9, and number 10. So I just kind of make a mental note of those numbers, and then when I'm ready to change sounds, I just pick one. And with the stuff that I was telling you about before, with 1 and 2 turning off your orchestra plus, 4 and 6 and 2 adding drum variation, 9 and 10 being harmony, I can kind of make these arrangements on the fly, right? And what I mean by that is I can take away or add to my orchestra, my music style, in addition to just changing the melody sounds. So I don't have to have saved all this stuff. I don't have to have put in hours and hours. I mean, many of you will recognize the name Bill Curry, and he was the genius behind almost all this stuff, and he was the one that had to spend the hours and hours and hours, right? And by getting your instrument, you've kind of purchased all of that stuff, all of that knowledge, and all of that time got put in here, and all you have to do is select your music style and then pick the number. So to me, that's just such a cool feature. So hopefully if you have active preset display, you know already, and if you didn't know, make sure you go to your instrument right after this class and touch your number 4 over here, custom 4 or custom 3, and make sure that you pull up that display, because that'll tell you every sound that's in your numbers 1 through 10. So do you have any questions up to that point? I don't see any hands raised. All right. Well, I'm going to move on to another topic that's related, and this is going to be on many of the instruments, but not all. If you have a fanfare or above, you're going to have this stuff. If you have below a fanfare, you still will have some of these sounds, but you're not going to be able to access them in the exact same way. So if I talk about something that maybe you don't have, I would highly encourage you to call or email your local store's personal assistants and ask them how to get that on your instrument, because a lot of you will have some of the sounds, but maybe not in the same groupings. Okay, so what we talked about before today was either the rhythm preset or your style setups. Okay, so that's the most common, I think, that people use. You just turn on the style, and they're already built in there. They're ready to go. And you have even as many as 44, right? Because if you have numbers 1 through 10, you really have 0 through 10, which on many of the instruments will give you a sound for the upper and the lower for 22 sounds. And if you have that vintage button, you double that. You get 44 sounds. So to me, that's enough to choose from 99% of the time. However, there are some instances when I want to go and get other sounds. And of course, depending on your instrument, you might have many, many, many other sounds. So what I want to talk about next are your category presets or your category setups. And those are typically going to be just to the right of your numbers 1 through 10. You can see on the Sterling here, I have these white buttons here. Oh yeah, thank you, Sean. So I'm not sure which manual this is from, but it says category presets give you 264 easy-to-use upper keyboard registrations. So this may have been...
Sterling.
What is it?
That's the Sterling.
Oh, is it the Sterling? Okay. So I would worry less about the number that you have. I want to show you how to get to all the different ones. Okay, so on the Sterling, you can see there it's marked theater, country, big band, show, Latin, and more. So for these buttons on the panel, I can touch any one of those with the exception of more, and that'll highlight one of these ones here. So for example, if I want big band sounds, melody sounds, right? I touch big band, and I have a whole group of 11 registrations for the upper keyboard, 11 registrations for the lower keyboard that are all big band sounds. All right? Now, that's different from touching big band over here. I want to make that very clear. So there's big band music styles, and then there's big band melody sounds. So I'm just talking about the melody sounds. One of the big benefits of your category presets are that they can be used with or without a style. So remember, the style setups or rhythm presets must be used with the style turned on, or else the instrument doesn't know what to put in there, because it's putting instruments here based on what you pick. So if there's nothing picked, there's no sounds. Category presets, on the other hand, do not change. So categories are good with or without a style. So if you're kind of in practice mode or whatever, you don't want the whole style turned on, I can just touch, I'll touch country, and I can just start playing just with the easy button. It's one of 3 country songs that I know. And I can go to big band sounds, I can go to whatever I want. Now, if I touch more, and this is going to be the case, it's very similar, it doesn't say more, but on the E-series instruments. So if you have something like a Marquis or one of the higher-end E-series, it's going to look slightly different than the panel there. I don't know if you have a display of that one or not, Sean, but either way, you want to touch category and select, okay? And what that'll do is it'll pop it up on the screen. So all of your categories that you have there will pop up on the screen. Now, if you look at the graphic there, you see you see categories like sacred, modern, nostalgic, lush, etc. Keep in mind that each one of those titles represents 22 melody sounds. So if I go to nostalgic, for example, it's not, oh, I have a great nostalgic sound. No, in fact, nostalgic represents 22 nostalgic instruments. Well, how do I know what they are? Come back over to my Magic Custom 4 button and hit that, and it'll show me all of the sounds right there on the screen. So can you patch me back in here, Sean? I'm going to try to get real close here so you can see. So that's my nostalgic category. You can see up in towards the middle there under preset info, it says category nostalgic. So all of those sounds are in my nostalgic category. I've got Louis Armstrong, I've got the Dorseys, I've got Dennis Oz awesome organ, I've got the Stradivarius violin. So let me take you on a little tour of this category. I'll try not to get carried away like I did yesterday. I was about to play a whole concert again. I really like the nostalgic category. Oh my gosh, isn't that fun? I love
Very
those
nice.
sounds.
We have a question from Inez.
Yeah. What's up,
Thank you.
Inez?
Now, when you do this, because I'm at the organ right now, then you have to play the chords by yourself. You can't just play like a one finger chord, right? You have to know your C chord, your F chord, your G chord.
Nope. Nope. I was doing it with the easy button. I may have not reminded myself to play the easy play chords.
Oh,
But yeah,
so if you turn
yeah,
the easy button
easy play chords
on,
absolutely work. And in fact, I'll show you. Did you have another question, Inez, besides that?
no, that's it.
Okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to zoom back in here on the screen. And what I want to do is show you another really important button. This is actually a virtual button. Now, when I touch more, remember I showed you on the panel there, more, it's going to show up like this on the Sterling. Now, depending on your instrument, you might actually have different button or different titles there, and that's okay. But I want you to take note in the very bottom right of the screen, it says next. Okay, because when I touched more on the Sterling here, it's only showing me 8 things. And I say only 8. Remember, each one of those represents 22 sounds, right? But if I touch next, now I have a whole new screen, another 8 categories of sounds. Now, if I touch something like around the world, and then my magic number 4 button, you can see all these sounds from around the world. I got bagpipes, I got French accordion, Spanish guitar, mandolin orchestra. I even got didgeridoo. I don't know if anybody's ever used that for a song, but it's in there. Okay.
Oh, I have.
Did you say you have, Sean?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I'd like to hear that in your concert on Friday. So if I touch next again, I get another page. So you can see here I got some banks. I have beautiful theater organs. And then I have one called finales. Now I'm going to show you a couple things from finales just to kind of build off of what I had told Inez just now. And that you can totally use your easy play chords for these. So what I'm going to do is put on finales. Now finales, keep in mind, could also be big epic beginnings too. Typically people use these for the end of the song, but let me show you. This is going to be just one or two fingers in the chord and one in the melody. Oh, I'm also going to turn off the memory function. And all that does is when I touch an easy play chord, okay, instead of holding it the whole time, it'll just go like this. So it only holds down the chord for as long as I want to. So I'm just going to turn the memory off, but you can do it just regular easy play too. So I'm going to do a little music from Sound of Music.
Very nice. We got one more question maybe we can get to, and then we probably got to wrap up soon. Here.
Yeah. Looks like we got Amy or Amy.
Amy?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay. You've been talking about more. Okay, on your instrument. Now, I don't see it in my instrument. Is it the same as mix?
What instrument do you have, Amy?
I have Rialto.
So on the Rialto, it's going to be a little bit different. On if you look to your numbers 1 through 10 and you look just to the right,
Yeah.
there should be a thing that says Category Select.
Yes, I see.
And so you want to make sure that's on and then that you can see the categories on the screen. So it should come up with something that says virtual orchestra and I forget what. Do you remember what comes up on that screen, Sean?
On which screen?
As for like when you pull up categories on a Rialto, and it says virtual orchestra and
Yeah, it pulls up all the categories on the screen, and then you just have to touch the category button to turn them on.
Yeah. It should say
I know.
virtual orchestra, modern, some other ones. Did that work?
Okay, hold on a second. I'm seeing Bank A, Bank B, Bank C, pop organ, love songs
Yep.
around the
That's
world.
the one. And then if you look in the very bottom right of your big window, you can touch next. And then next is going to give you, or you can touch previous too. It'll switch to the next or the previous screen.
Yeah, I've been pressing that arrow. Next.
Yep.
Okay, now is that what you're saying as more?
Well, more is not actually on yours because what they did on the Sterling, for example, is they put some of the categories on the panel, and then they put more to access all of the other categories because there just wasn't enough room for all the buttons, right, on the panel. So
Okay.
on the E series instruments, the upper end ones, like yours, what they did is they didn't even put any on the panel. They just put essentially more, which is category select. So when you touch that,
Okay.
it'll
Yeah.
pop up all of them in the window.
Oh, okay. Because I've been
And that's going to
looking
be
at.
the case for not only for the Rialto, but for the Inspire, the Rialto, the Marquis, Grand Marquis, and the Aria will all work like that.
I see, because I was looking at the music styles and I've been looking at mix. I was thinking if that's more that you're talking about.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
mix.
So what we're talking about today are only the melody sounds. So
Oh,
mixed
okay.
is actually a grouping of your music styles,
Music
and it's
styles,
like
yes.
Hawaiian and some other stuff.
Okay, I see. Okay.
All righty.
All right.
Does anybody else have any questions? That's about all the time we have for today, but I'm happy to answer some if anybody has some questions.
We have some announcements from Robert we got to get to too. Let's see. Clive, go ahead. Oh, you might have to touch the unmute button there.
Okay, very informative. Thank you very much. A good refresher. Just an observation. When you're playing, if the mic is too near the keyboard and obviously the speakers in the instrument, you're getting a lot of wow reverberation. So can you put the mic a bit further back, please?
I actually turn the mic off every time I play, so it shouldn't be coming from the mic.
It's funny.
The joys of internet.
Yeah, I think it might just be a Zoom thing or a connection thing, but yeah, I always, because I have an on-off switch on the mic, so if I'm not talking into it,
Yes.
so hopefully it's not feeding back too bad.
All right. You're not done yet. You're going to have to play one little last short number there before we're done. I'm going to do a couple quick announcements for you. And then we're going to turn it back over to Bryan to play just a quick little song for you. And then we have another class coming up. We got about 15 minutes. But anyway, what I'm going to do is today, sometime between now and Clive, I'm going to say tonight, but it'll probably be morning by the time you get it. We're going to be an email coming out sometime today, my time. And it's almost done, but it's going to look, I have a quick snapshot here of what it's going to look like. I just printed it out. So do you see that there? Is that all right, Sean?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So I sent myself a test is what I did just to see what it would look like. So it's going to look similar to what I've done in the past, but you're going to notice that as you read through it, it's going to say that we have other workshops that we're going to be offering throughout the month of June. Now, it's not going to be cut off like this. On your view, it's going to look a lot better, but it's going to look something like this. And as you see it, in fact, let me do this. Should give you a really good idea. Let me go to give me 1 second, bear with me. Okay, so I'm going to actually give you a screenshot of my email. And you can see all the emails you guys send me. So if I don't respond right away, I'm telling the truth. But anyway, here's the email here. So you see it looks something like this. And it's going to, if you scroll down, I haven't finished yet, but it's going to have these little sign-up boxes. It'll make it easier for me if you do it. So depending on the model you have, so you can see I have one coming up for Aria Grand Marquis, and then it does say Rialto Inspirers are encouraged to attend because some of the panel operations are the same. So you definitely want to do that. We originally had this for 9 o'clock. I'm going to do it at 8:45 a.m. Arizona, which is 11:45 a.m. Florida. And in England, you'll have to, I don't know what it is. I'm sure you could figure it out. And then we have the Easy and SD series. We're going to do a special product clinic. These product tips are designed to teach you about the features. So it's kind of like what Bryan was doing today, but as we have the instructors teach, it's going to be solely on those instruments for those particular workshops. So you'll see they have all the times on them. And what's going to happen is I'll have links for all of those in there. And then, you know, there's an A series. And then as you see, I put all of the models that it represents. If there, for some reason there's one that's not, just give a holler to your local Fletcher Music Centers or myself, and I'll make sure someone does follow up with you, and they'll tell you which one would be best. So that's going to be coming out today. If there's someone new to making music, playing music for the first time, or maybe you started playing music for the first time a few months ago, you want to start off, we are going to be gradually going to just small phases as time goes on, opening our stores, but we're also going to offer a level 1 conductor magic class for beginners, and it'll have that information there as well, and you can join us for that. And that's where we're going to just, for those students that are brand new. Now, you're going to notice that this right here, this class schedule that we currently have is going to look different in your email. Because what's going to happen starting next week is these, because of all these other workshops and what have you, we're going to have to, we're going to consolidate. And so we're going to ask that the Thursday class join either the Wednesday or Thursday at the 11/2 o'clock slot. Because what that's going to do is it's going to allow us to offer other workshops and educational offerings throughout the month. We're running out of time slots, and so we have enough room on our Zoom account that we can add all of you into one of those 2 days. So be on the lookout for that information as you get it. Last but not least, you probably saw this, but we had an email go out on Monday, and it was, you know, I wanted to do something a little bit differently as a national sales manager. And so rather than doing a Memorial Day sale and giving you up to Memorial Day, if you were interested, you'll notice that we had in here was celebrating Memorial Day with an unprecedented sale on every organ in stock from May 25th to the 31st. And we have instruments that are over 50% off on select models. And we are doing this because as we continue doing what we were doing throughout the month of May, it became very apparent that the more that we offer these opportunities, when we start to open up in June to our next phase, we are protecting our music club activities and classes and so forth. And the best way to do that is by creating sales revenue for our products, but also giving back to our loyal customers in ways of some very, as you can see, some very serious discounts there. And then we have just a few instruments that I highlighted, but we have a lot of other things in store for you. With that said, we have one other thing on tomorrow. It's tomorrow, right, Sean?
Yep.
Okay. Coming to you from Mesa, Arizona, is going to be Sean Maloney, and is Joe Thompson, is he here today, or?
He was. He's
He was.
actually on his way to the store here.
Oh, okay. Well, he was the guy that was looking relaxed in the beginning. He and Sean will be doing our live performance tomorrow. Be on the lookout. We currently have it scheduled as a Facebook Live. We're toying with the idea of patching in a Zoom or creating a link on Facebook Live to Zoom. We ran into some technical difficulties with getting boot off Facebook. So you'll be on the lookout for the email for that. That's also coming to you today. Last but not least, we've got Bryan, you have to play a 2-minute song. Do you know any songs 2 minutes long?
Oh, I think I can muster one up here.
All right.
So thanks everybody for joining us again. The pleasure as always. I played this one yesterday because I was kind of in a Latin mood, which is why I did Girl from Ipanema. And I played this one at the end and people seemed to like it. This is a tune called Wave, and it's written by the same guy who wrote Girl from Ipanema, who is Antonio Carlos Jobim. And he had, I don't know, dozens and dozens. He was probably the most prolific bossa nova composer of all time. So this is a beautiful song called Wave. Hope you guys like it. And thanks again for joining us today. All righty. Oh, I just noticed I hadn't hit my
Applause all
keyboard
around.
down. Sorry about that. Hopefully you enjoyed the music anyway.
Well, that's it for us. So if you want to say anything, you can unmute yourselves, but we have to get to the next class in just a couple minutes. So you're welcome to say
Everybody was
goodbye.
applauding, waving their hands like this, and air applause. And I do have one little problem. Last week I told you guys to bring a virtual apple. Nobody brought a virtual apple for the teacher. Anyway, we hope you enjoyed the class today. Be on the lookout for all the emails, the workshops. We have stuff for everybody. All right, so we're going to continue doing that. Keep an eye out next month. We're going to have Sean Maloney teaching workshops. We're going to have Joe Thompson teaching. We're going to have Joni Monero teaching. Bryan is going to continue teaching. And then I might just chime in once in a while too. So thank you and have a wonderful day. And I'll leave it on for one more minute. Oh, wait, here's my virtual apple.
Aww.
That's for you, Bryan. You're a good teacher. I learned something new today. All right. Well, thank you. If you want to say anything, you've got about 1 minute to say something on your way out.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Always great. Thanks very much.
Really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Always.
Thank
Oh,
you,
yeah.
Bryan. Thanks, Bryan.
Okay. All right.
And we're going to leave.
I'd like to call this